This is Dr. James with Helpmommy.com, and today is video 1 of 5 regarding 4-month-olds. And today we're going to talk about what they eat. So again, as far as what they drink, a 4-month-old should be either on breast milk or formula. And that should be the only fluid intake that they should be having. They shouldn't be having any regular water or juice yet. As far as other things, 4 months old is when we can start solid foods. The important thing is your baby ready? And I like to divide this up into like 2 categories: your family history and then your baby's developmental abilities. So there's some family history, and what we want to think about is a first-degree relative. And a first-degree relative is either going to be the baby's mom and dad or the baby's brothers and sisters. That's as far back as we're going to go. And so one of the things that I like to look at is, do any of those people, the baby or any of the first-degree relatives, have eczema, asthma, or food allergies, or ever had those? If we have any history of those 3 things, I always want to wait until 6 months to introduce baby foods. There's some pretty good studies that have shown that if you have any of those risk factors, just by holding off until 6 months to introduce solid foods, that will have less of any of those 3. So that's the first thing I look at. The second thing I look at is the baby and their development. I want a baby who's able to hold their head up and not just have it floppy. I also want to have a baby that's interested in food. And what I'm really looking for is a baby that's like sitting on their mom and dad's lap while they're eating and doing this. There's something about that movement that has to do with the baby's ability to have their tongue move the food back instead of shove it forward or shove it to the side and chipmunk. So when I have all of those things in place, that's when I start food. Now, I always make the joke that if you had 100 pediatricians and you lined them up and you asked them how to start baby food, you would probably get 101 different answers, because one of them is a flake and just changes their mind. There are lots of ways to skin the cat. And to be honest, there's some variations that you have to do, just baby to baby. But a lot of times, this is the way I do it. Do not hold this up as gospel. If they are closer to 4 months old, I will start with rice cereal with a spoon, with the caveat that there is nothing good for you in rice cereal. It is a completely empty calorie food. The only reason I'm using it is it's fairly hypoallergenic, it's cheap, and you can play with the texture. But the moment that your baby swallows it, that they're able to take it off the spoon and actually swallow it, now it is food and I get rid of it. So as they're learning to do stuff and it's coming back out, I'll use it because it's cheap and we can play the texture. But the moment that they swallow it and now we can use it as food, I get rid of it and I start baby food. Now, I start my baby food, I do green vegetable first, orange yellow vegetables next, fruits last. That has nothing to do with allergies. It has only to do with sugar. Babies love sugar. So I'm going from the least amount of sugar to the most amount of sugar. I have done this a long time. And what I have figured out is the babies that start off with things like applesauce do not eat green beans. So I start off with the things that just naturally don't taste as good to babies, and I have them do that first, because then they like it because it's novel. And then I do the stuff that's going to naturally taste good to them, that stuff with sugar in it, and I save it to last. And then I start just mixing and matching it. As far as the difference between stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, I just let the baby decide. And, as far as amounts, sometimes they're just doing a spoonful or so once a day. Some of them get up to 3 times a day fairly quickly. Some of them by 6 months will be up to 3 times a day. As far as amount, again, I leave that up to the baby. I let them eat the solids first and then their milk next. And they will let you know when they're done with their food and will start spitting it back at you. And then after they eat their food, then you offer them their milk. And you just kind of let them decide. They will let you know. Usually at 4 months, when you're doing solid foods, it's not going to affect the amount of milk that they drink. They continue to drink the same amount of milk. And there's not anything that you have to think about that. So that is what is usually going on with feeding. Some of these babies are going to be starting solid foods. Some of them are going to be waiting till later in 6 months. There is no harm in waiting till 6 months. In fact, the American Academy of Pediatrics, especially for breastfed babies, actually recommends this. I do know this, if you wait till 6 months, they do pick up solid foods much faster. There's not that so much frustration. As far as when do you start baby foods, do it when you're going to have the most time. Most people do that in the evening, but whenever in your schedule you have the most time to be able to put it in their mouth, scrape it off the sides of their mouth, put it back in their mouth, scrape it off the sides of their mouth, put it back in their mouth, because this can be an exercise in frustration. This is not a fast process as they're first learning. So whenever you're going to have the most time so that you can both enjoyably and not in a rushed way introduce solid foods, that's when you want to first do it. So that's what we do as far as food at 4 months.